Last time on the LS vs Coyote engine shootout of Horsepower Wars, we checked out the rules, we introduced the builders, and we got to see exactly how both teams can win points. Today, we're flying to LME in Texas to check out the LS engine build and see exactly what Bryan Neelen and his team have in mind for the build, the points, and the competition.
It is 4:45 in the morning. Flying to Texas. And it's like 10 degrees outside. Looking forward to getting groped by the TSA. Got my groping pants on.
Just landed at Houston International Airport, and tomorrow is the day we are going to check out the LS build at LME, and it's gonna be dope. So, we're on our way to LME to check out the LS build, but the thing that keeps getting me is the fact that I had body lotion in my room. You don't really need the word body in that. Hitting the toll road to get to LME.
CX-3's got power.
I hope it's turboed. We are finally here at LME. I'm super stoked. I'm really curious and I want to see the build. I want to meet Bryan Neelen because I've heard a lot about him. Let's check it out. Let's build an engine. Let's make some horsepower. Welcome back to the LS vs Coyote engine shootout of Horsepower Wars. In the last episode, we went over the premise of the competition. Two different builders building each engine, the Coyote and the LS, with a $15,000 budget. We have no idea who is going to win. This is a battle of the brands. We have no idea which engine is better. We also are going to see which engine makes more horsepower peak, more horsepower average, and which one makes more horsepower per cubic inch. But for now, let's talk to Bryan Neelen, the owner of LME, and see what parts are going to our LS and why. Bryan, what's happening, guys? What's up, man? How are you? Good. Long flights, and we're finally here. Before we get into the build of the LS and start talking about your strategy and all that, I want to know about the history of the company and your background, because I personally don't know a whole lot about it.
Well, late model engines, we started it 15 years ago, myself and my business partner, Pecos Laughlin. When we got started, it was just Tim and I building some engines, having fun, and it's kind of evolved over the years to, a 13-man crew that's cranking out a ton of engines each year, and we've got the best guys in the business.
Let's talk about the LS.
Our strategy with this build is to dominate the horsepower numbers. We wanted to build a big enough engine to where we could get that peak horsepower number, peak horsepower, peak torque. That's the first criteria is to win is that. If we can take that, then there's a good chance we're going to take the average horsepower from peak back 3,000 RPM. Our strategy is to utilize an intake manifold that will not be a peaky, but just carry the power throughout. So if we can turn this thing, around 7,500, go back 3,000 RPM and just stack up the big numbers, we feel like that's going to be the winning combination.
Where do you think the Coyote is going to struggle in this competition, and where do you think the LS is going to outshine it?
I think the struggle for the Coyote is definitely going to be the size of the engine. It is a smaller engine. I think they're going to have a benefit in the horsepower per cubic inch. However, if we can take the first two, it doesn't really matter. I think the Coyote is going to be able to get similar peak numbers. I really do. It's a very efficient engine, and they should be able to turn a bunch of RPM and do well with that. However, I think when we look at the peak number as well as that 3,000 back, I feel like the LSX is going to take it home.
I feel like I have a really good idea of what you guys are going for and the strategy and everything. So let's actually go out. Are you guys putting the LS together?
We're rocking it right now.
All right, let's go take a look.
Awesome.
All right. Bryan Neelen and his team are going after big cubic inches and big horsepower numbers. They're starting with a GM Bowtie LSX block to build 427 cubic inches. They're matching the block and displacement with 11-1 compression, Brodix BR7 cylinder heads, a Comp Cam's hydraulic roller setup, and an F1X ProCharger to make as much power as possible. And they're topping the entire setup with their own billet intake manifold to make sure this engine can handle a lot of boost efficiently. Thanks to our friends over at Summit Racing Equipment, we know exactly how much of the budget was used to purchase the engine parts and to put this setup together. Altogether, LME used $14,985 of the $15,000 budget. So there's a lot of machining going on a lot of brand new parts. Why is that?
When we get these blocks from GM, they are undersized. The basis of any good performance build is the line hone. That is the foundation or the starting point for the blueprinting process.
So we just got a little bit of a really quick, short tour of LME.
Yeah, that's fine.
This place is baller, man. It is super baller. Oh, I like that. The little LME
Bring other engines.
engraving on the, oh, I guess if I can focus, huh? Dude, I'm like a kid in a candy store in here. I am so excited right now. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my, look at this. Look at those blocks, like for real? And this isn't even all of them. We are just getting all of the parts for the LS build set out, and they look pretty trick. So here they are, let's see here. This is one part that I am really gonna question him about, are these LS7 lifters. There's myths about, oh, you know, like they fail the quality control because they make so many, they're garbage. But we're gonna see. I've ran LS7 lifters in a couple different builds and didn't have a problem, but 2 does not make it a thing. ARP is providing the main studs, but GM provided the head bolts? What?
Head bolts?
That seems kind of weird, right? You would think do ARP studs and ARP studs, not studs and bolts. But a lot of OEM stuff. This is it.
That's it.
We're ready to finally start putting this thing together. So let's talk about the block, because this is a GM Bowtie LSX block. So one question I have been thinking about a lot is, why didn't you start with like an LQ or an LM7 with the limited budget? Because we see them all the time and they make a bunch of power.
We kind of like to, in a sense, do it the right way here. So if we're looking at the total budget, and one of our requirements, the first requirement was to get a stable block, to get the best block we could afford to put in it, which was the LSX block. We felt like that would give us the best foundation to make power reliably and make it to the finish line, if you will.
Sure.
What sets the LSX block apart from your standard LQ9 or the like would be the priority main oiling circuit. The 6 bolts per cylinder. It has a thicker deck, thicker cylinder walls. It's made out of a higher nickel content than the 6-liter block. Main webbing is stronger. I mean, it's just an overall race-based block. So this is our go-to street strip block. Has all of the benefits of the race block, but is in a package where you can utilize with factory oil pans. That's a big plus of this block. You can actually get them together in a reasonable amount of time, and they're user-friendly.
I really want to talk about the crankshaft because I do have some questions about it, and it is a factory GM LS7 piece.
Right. So our goal for this project was to obtain 427 cubic inches, utilizing the LSX block, 4.125 bore, and the GM crank has a 4-inch stroke.
We need to check clearances and get the crank laid into the block. Who is going to be helping us with that today?
All right, we've got Vinny Monaghetti. He's been with us for a little over 5 years, one of the baddest LS engine builders in the country. He's got his name on a lot of fast stuff and a lot of record setters, so.
See the engine builder in his natural habitat, assembling pistons and connecting rods together into one. When it comes to factory tolerances and like a factory crankshaft versus say like a Cali's or a Manley or whatever crankshaft, how do you see the factory stacking up against the aftermarket as far as clearancing?
Well, without a doubt, the factory cranks are high quality and they're nice. They have traditional radius where the factory cranks have a rolled radius, which some can argue that the rolled radius is a stronger radius. The factory cranks are very high quality material. We have factory crankshafts up in that 1500 plus horsepower range
and that's where we plan to go with this one.
All right, it looks like Vinny is getting ready to lay the crank, and let's get it in because we have a lot of other parts we gotta talk about. And you guys have a specific style procedure with cleaning and prepping your cranks, right?
Yeah, well, back beyond our grinding of the crank and all of that, we do shampoo the oil holes better than they come from the manufacturer, just aids in oil delivery to the bearings. Another thing we do is we ensure that the crankshaft has a 2RA or better surface finish. So a lot of, even some of the aftermarket cranks will come in at a, let's say a 4RA. We'll get them down to a 2 or better. And that has just, the smoother the journal surface finish, the better off you are.
There was something I was going to ask you because I was looking at that crank and I'm like, man, these things are chamfered really nice from the factory. And that is not factory.
Right, so we kind of take it a step further for sure. Another thing we did with this crankshaft is being an LS7 crank, it starts out as a long post. The snout of the crankshaft is about a little over 800 thousandths longer than it is now. We cut that down because we're going to be using a wet sump oil pump. So we just kind of made it a wet sump crank.
And it is double key weight for the ProCharger, correct?
Right, we did add an additional 3/16 key. Matter of fact, too, the factory crank is not keyed, just has a single key for the crank gear, but we added a 3/16 in line with that, as well as an additional 3/16 keyway, 180 out from the one that's in line with the crank gear.
So we just got done getting the crank into the block. This thing spins like butter. I want you guys to build this for me and so I can take one home. Because it spins better than any engine I put together. Big surprise. That's it. We're moving, we're cruising.
Give me this, please.
Okay. Well,
Thank you. Get back to work, Brian. Let's go, man.
Starting to look like an engine, we need to talk about the pistons and the connecting rods.
Start off, we got some Molle 4125 -8cc forged pistons. They did a great job with them. It's a nice box forging, heavy wall wrist pin, tool steel wrist pin, and their premium ring pack for the boost application. So it's a 1.5 top ring, 1 millimeter second with a 2 millimeter oil.
And what kind of compression ratio did you guys end up choosing on that?
We're going to be right at 11:1. Okay. Yeah. You know, we just went with something that was not knowing exactly what E85 we're going to get at the test, so we kind of keep it on the mid to more aggressive on the compression.
Let's talk about the connecting rods because those are big, beefy mother truckers.
It's a Sines 300M 6125. That's a large journal, small block Chevy, so 2100 journal. 927 wrist pin. It's running their L19, ARP L19 rod bolt. So it should be a real stout setup. I mean, beefy for sure.
Brandon, you're gonna have to get on my shot. This is way more, my stuff's way more important. The short block's assembled. Brandon, get out of my shot. The pistons are all in, check it out. What? And then tomorrow the heads are going on and Brandon wouldn't get on my shot, so I'm just gonna have to accept that. Hurts my feelings. Oh, hey, Vinny's not by the engine for once. And it is looking like an engine. Check this out. Cylinder heads, valve covers, and you can even see a rocker arm down in there. Harmonic balancer, bigger pulley for the supercharger. All right. All right, so Royal Purple is providing all the oils for both the LS and the Coyote, and Chris from Royal Purple is actually walking in right now with the oil for the LS. Chris, what's up, man? How you doing? Good. So he's got a box right here of some of the oil that we're going to be using in the LS after it's broken in, right?
Exactly. For braking, you're going to want to use something that's going to allow that braking to happen quickly and efficiently so you get good piston ring seals. Afterwards, you're going to want to switch to a higher performance oil that's going to offer more protection and free up a little bit more horsepower. And that's what we get XPR for.
I have seen a bunch of really cool stuff going on today. Watching you guys completely assemble this engine from bottom to top has been a real treat for me. But we still got to talk about the cylinder heads because that's a huge part of the engine. I know you guys do a lot of the machining in-house.
That's right. So we started out with the Brodix BR7 casting. So it's a Porter's casting. Use a ton of their stuff, real high quality products. So nice clean casting. It's our in-house developed LS7 program. So it's our big force induction exhaust port. Runs a 2200 intake valve, 1610 exhaust. We elected to go with the titanium intake and stainless exhaust for this application.
And what did you guys do as far as valve springs and rockers?
So we ran a 700 lift pack spring, titanium retainers. We ran the factory rocker and 3/8 push rod GMLS7 lifter.
And I know you guys have a custom comp cam, correct?
That's right. So it's a hydraulic roller, 245, 263 at 50, 714 lift on a 115 load center. We put it in about 4 degrees advanced.
That's a pretty big amount of lift. I mean, when a lot of LS guys are looking at camshafts, you know, they're looking at lift, you know, in the 500s, maybe 600s, but I mean, this is over 7.
Right. So again, this is a competition. So on a typical street application, you know, if we're talking over the phone and I'm recommending you a camshaft, we typically keep it out 650 lift on a standard LS7 with a factory rocker, hydraulic roller, keep it at 650 lift max. But in this particular circumstance, we're going for max power, trying to just give it every little bit we can.
Alright, so they just got done with the top of the intake manifold for the LS on the LS vs Coyote engine shootout, and they did something really trick on their CNC, on one of their CNC machines. They actually cut the Horsepower Wars logo into the top of the manifold, and it looks awesome. It looks so cool. I really want to talk about this intake manifold because it looks super trick.
So this is all machined in-house. This is our LS7 billet intake manifold. Has some really nice features, but it starts out as 234 pounds of billet aluminum, 5 different pieces. It takes about 26 hours of machine time. It's all 60-61 billet aluminum, all dovetail O-ringed, so there's no welding, just all bolts together, sealed up real tight. Great for boost applications. Fits under the hood of a Corvette, which is kind of the neat thing. That's why we developed it in the first place, is we were building a bunch of high horsepower Corvette engines, and we really had no manifold option to fit under the hood. So that's where this came about. So it serves us really well. It's got a big plenum short runner, so we feel like it's going to carry the RPM where we need it to win this competition.
And let's talk about the throttle body, the fuel rails, and the injectors, because we need to kind of complete the entire induction package, and there's, you know, some pretty nice accessories on the manifold.
Sure. So we're working with Holley on the rails. So it's a Holley EFI billet fuel rail, Deutschwerks.
Deutschwerks. It's pronounced Deutschwerks.
Injector that should get the fuel to the cylinders like we need it.
And what size throttle body did you go with? Because I know there's some 90s, there's some 92s, there's some the 108s even.
Yep. So it's a Holley Sniper 102, real affordable throttle body for the application. So good value there.
So now we've talked about the engine. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I've loved seeing stuff getting machined and cut and assembled and seeing how you guys do your thing. Now it's time to put the blower on the front of it, the ProCharger, and I'm guessing you went with either an F1A 94 or an F1X. So you may remember, before we headed to LME, I guessed that they were going to put either an F1A 94 or an F1X onto the LS engine. Guess what?
F1X.
So we got the ProCharger on the F1X strapped onto the front with their LSX race kit. The entire setup is incredible. Watching you guys work as a team, machining stuff really quick and making sure everything is just right, it's been an awesome experience for me, and wow, what a product.
Thank you. The whole crew here, they're badass. They really came together and got this thing done in great fashion. I can always count on them. Also want to give a shout out to all of the great sponsors that provided the product for this. It was a pleasure working with them. Molly Pistons was awesome. ProCharger with getting this whole setup done up. Comp Cams and Clevite. Again, all those guys worked out really, really nice, and we're happy to be a part of the whole combination.
I think it was definitely a great combination between all the sponsors and you guys here at LME. Thank you so much for having us, and make sure to stay tuned for the Coyote build coming up in the next episode of LS vs. Coyote at horsepowerwars.com. Well, I'm on my final flight home after the LS vs. Coyote engine shootout. The LS section of the build, actually. The shootout is not done. We need to see the Coyote build in the next episode. Tune in, horsepowerwars.com, and make sure to check out everything we got going on. We'll see you in Florida at MPR.